اعتماد کی منزل ہے۔ الحمدللہ الذی من خشیتہ ترد السماء وسکانها وترجف الارض وامارها وتموج البحار ومن يسبح في غمراتها الحمدللہ الذی هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا ان هدانا الله الحمدللہ الذی يخلق ولم يخلق ويرزق ولا يرزق ويطعم ولا يطعم ويميت الأحياء ويحيي الموتى وهو حي لا يموت بيده الخير وهو على كل شيء قدیر۔ خدایا حضرت محمد پر رحمت نازل فرما جو تیرا بندہ رسول امین محبوب منتخب بہترین خلائق حافظ اسرار اور مبلغ رسالت ہیں، اور تمام رحمتیں برکتوں مہربانیوں عنایتوں اور سلامتیوں سے بہتر حسین تر مکمل ترین پاکیزہ تر طیب و طاہر اور اعلیٰ افراد رافع صلوات جو تو نے کسی بھی اپنے بندہ نبی رسول منتخب یا صاحب کرامت پر عذاب پر نازل کی ہے۔ اللہم وصلی علی علی امیر المؤمنین ووسیع رسول رب العالمین عبدک و ولیک و آخر رسولک وحجتک علی خلقک وآیاتک الکبریٰ والنباء العظیم وصلی علی الصدیقۃ الطاہرہ فاطمۃ الزہراء سید النساء العالمین وصلی علی سبط الرحمہ وامام الہدیٰ الحسن والحسین سید شباب اہل الجنہ وصلی علی ائمۃ المسلمین علی ابن الحسین و محمد ابن علی و جعفر ابن محمد و موسیٰ ابن جعفر و علی ابن موسیٰ و محمد ابن علی و علی ابن محمد و الحسن ابن علی۔ والخلف الهادي المهدي حججك على عبادك وأمنائك في بلادك صلوات كثيرة نائمة اللهم وصل على ولي أمرك القائم المؤمل العدل المنتظر وحفه بملائكة المقربين وأيده بروح القدس يا رب العالمين اللهم اجعل داعيا إلى كتابك والقائم بدينك استخلفه في الأرض كما استخلفت الذين من قبله مكن له دينه الذي أرزيته له أبدله من بعد خوفه أمنا يعبدك لا يشرك بك شيئا اللهم أعزه وعزز به وانصره وانتصر به وانصره نصرا عزيزا وافتح له فتحا يسيرا واجعل له من لدنك سلطانا نصيرا اللهم أظهر به دينك وسنة نبيك حتى لا يستخفي بشيء من الحق مخافة أحد من الخلق۔ خدایا ہم تجھ سے اس محترم حکومت کے طلبگار ہیں جس کے ذریعے اسلام اور اہل اسلام کو عزت نصیب ہو، نفاق اور اہل نفاق ذلیل ہوں، اور ہم اپنے دین کے داعیوں اور اپنے راہ کے قائدین میں قرار دے اور اس کے نتیجہ میں دنیا اور آخرت کی کرامت عطا فرما دے۔ خدایا جو حق تو نے پہنچوا دیا ہے اس کے اٹھانے کی طاقت بھی عطا فرما، اور جو ہمیں نہیں معلوم ہو سکا اس تک ہمیں پہنچا دے۔ خدایا ان کے ذریعے ہماری پرآگندگی کو دور فرما، ہمارے درمیان پیدا ہو جانے والے شگاف کو پر کر دے، ہمارے تفرقہ کو ختم کر دے اور ہماری قلت کو کثرت میں تبدیل فرما دے، ہماری ذلت کو عزت بنا دے اور ہماری غربت کو دولت میں تبدیل کر دے، ہمارے قرض کو ادا فرما دے اور ہمارے فقر کی تلافی فرما دے، ہماری حاجتوں کو پورا فرما دے اور ہماری تنگ دستی کو دور فرما دے، ہمارے چہروں کو روشن کر دے اور ہماری گرفتاریوں کو دور کر دے، ہماری حاجتوں میں کامیابی عطا فرما اور ہمارے وعدوں کو مکمل فرما، ہماری دعاؤں کو قبول فرما اور ہمارے مطالبات کو عطا فرما، اور دنیا و آخرت میں ہماری امیدوں تک ہمیں پہنچا دے اور پھر ہماری رغبت سے زیادہ عطا فرما۔ یا خیر المسئولین واسع المعطین اشف بہ صدورنا واحسب بہ غیظ قلوبنا واہدنا بہ لما اختلف فیہ من الحق بإذنک انا تہدی من تشاء الی صراط مستقیم وانصرنا بہ علی عدوک وعدونا الہ الحق آمین۔ پروردگار، ہم تیری بارگاہ میں فریادی ہیں کہ ہمارے درمیان سے تیرا پیغمبر اٹھ گیا ہے اور تیرے ولی پر پردہ غیب میں ہے، دشمنوں کی کثرت ہے اور اپنے عدد کی قلت ہے، فتنے سخت ہو گئے ہیں اور زمانے ہمارے خلاف ہجوم کر لیا ہے، لہٰذا محمد و آل محمد پر رحمت نازل فرما اور ہماری امداد فرما، فوری کامیابی کے ذریعے، نقصانات کو دور کرنے کے ذریعے، باعزز امداد اور اقتدار حق کے غلبہ کے ذریعے، اس رحمت کے وسیلہ سے جسے ہمارے شامل حال کر دے اور اس عافیت کے ذریعے جس کا لباس پہنا دے، ہم اپنے رحمت کے واسطہ سے کہ تو بہترین رحم کرنے والا ہے۔ اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد۔ ایک سورہ فاتحہ 3 مرتبہ قل ہو اللہ پڑھ کے اپنے تمام مرحومین کو روح کو ارسال کر دیں، اور آج کے اسپانسر برادر علی رضا، ان کے بھی جتنے بھی خاندان کے مرحوم ہیں، ان سب کے لیے ایک مرتبہ سورہ فاتحہ 3 مرتبہ قل ہو اللہ پڑھ دیں۔ اور ہمارے شرفو بھائی جو ہیں وہ ظاہر ہے آپ سب کو معلوم ہے ہاسپٹل میں ہیں، ان کی بھی صحت یابی کے لیے 5 مرتبہ میجوجی پڑھ لیتے ہیں، اللہ تعالیٰ ان کو جلد از جلد صحت عطا فرمائیں۔ بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم۔ امن یجیب المضطر اذا دعا ویکشف السوء، 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 امن یجیب المضطر اذا دعا ویکشف السوء۔ اللہم صلی اللہ محمد وآل محمد۔ یا اللہ، بیمار کربلا کے صدقے میں جتنے بھی مومنوں بیمار جہاں کہیں بھی بیمار ہیں انہیں صحت عطا فرما، خصوصاً شرفو بھائی کو مکمل صحت کاملہ عطا فرما، آمین ثم آمین۔ آج کے دن کی دعا پڑھتے ہیں کہ تو 30ویں شب کی جی اوکے، یہ ہے جی 23۔ بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم. یہ 23ویں تاریخ کی دعا ہے. اللہم اغسلنی فیہ من الذنوب وطہرنی فیہ من العیوب وامتحن قلبی فیہ بتقوی القلوب یا مکیل اثرات المذنبین. اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد. بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم. اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد یا فالق الاسباح وجاعل اللیل سکنا وشمس والقمر حسبانم یا عزیز یا علیم یا ظالم والطول والقوة والحول والفضل والانعام والجلال والاکرام. یا اللہ یا رحمان یا اللہ یا فرد یا وتر یا اللہ یا ظاہر یا باطن یا حی لا الہ الا انت لک الاسماء الحسنى والاسماء العلیاء والکبریاء والعلا. اسألک ان تصلی علی محمد وآل محمد وان تجعل على اسمی فی هذه الليلة فی السعداء وروحی مع الشہداء واحسانی فی علیین وإساءتی مغفورہ وان تہب لی یقین سباشر بہ قلبی وإيمان يحبه شك عني وترزقني بما قسمت لي وآتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة. وقنا عذاب النار الحریق وارزقنی فیہا ذکرک وشکرک والرغبۃ الیک والانابۃ والتوفیق لما وفقت لہ محمد وآل محمد علیہ وعلیہم السلام. اس کا ترجمہ پڑھ دیتا ہوں، ایک ہی صفحہ ہے. بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم. بنائے خدائے رحمان الرحیم، خدائے محمد و آل محمد پر رحمت نازل فرما. اے دامن سحر کے چاک کرنے والے، اے رات کو وجہ سکون بنانے والے، اے گرد شمس و قمر کے مرتب کرنے والے، اے صاحب عزت و علم، اے صاحب احسان و کرم، اے صاحب قوت طاقت اور مالک فضل و انعام و جلال اکرام. اے اللہ، اے مہربان، اے اللہ، اے یکتا، اے منفرد، اے اللہ، اے ظاہر، اے باطن، اے زندہ، تیرے علاوہ کوئی خدا نہیں ہے. تمام نیک اسماء، بلند صفات، بزرگی و نعمت تیرے لیے ہے. میری گزارش یہ ہے کہ محمد و آل محمد پر رحمت نازل فرما اور میرے نام کو آج کی رات نیک بختوں میں اور میرے روح کو شہیدوں کے ساتھ اور میری نیکی کو بلند ترین درجات میں قرار دے دے. میرے گناہ بخش دیے جائیں اور مجھے وہ یقین عطا فرمائے جو میرے دل میں پیوست ہو جائے، اور وہ ایمان دے دے جو شک کو دور کر دے اور مقصوم کو راضی بنا دے. مجھے دنیا آخرت میں نیکی عطا فرما اور آتش جہنم کے عذاب سے محفوظ بنا دے. اپنے ذکر، اپنے شکر، اپنے طرف رغبت و توجہ और इन तमाम अमूर की तौफ़ीक के करामत फरमा जिनकी तौफ़ीक मोहम्मद व आले मोहम्मद को करामत फरमाई है। तेरा सलाम इन तमाम हज़रात पर। अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ली अला मुहम्मदिन व आले मुहम्मद। बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। आज की अफ्तारी के स्पॉन्सर सैयद रज़ा, इनके तमाम मरहूमीन, इनके ख़ानदान के तमाम मरहूमीन के लिए एक मरतबा सूरह फ़ातिहा और 3 मरतबा कुल हुवल्लाह पढ़ के इनकी रूह को अरसाल कर दें। बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। कुल हुवल्लाहु अल्लाहु समद लम यलिद वलम यूलद वलम यकुल लहु कुफुवन अहद। लम यलिद वलम यूलद। Now I would request Maulana Sayyid Jawad Wahidi to come and address the majlis.
He's going? Okay. I think this is good. I think it should be good, right? Can you hear me? Okay. Beside the salawat, please. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. So, inshallah, tonight I would like to spend some time on the issue around having a sound iman and action. I think this is good. Thank you. Jazakallah. Thank you. Beside another salawat, please. And in our tradition, what the word is, it's not working. What the word is, having a sound iman, which means islah, right? And on the other hand, we have the word of fisad, which means corruption. And these two words are something that we have repetition in the verses of the Quran and the traditions from Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. I'm going to read this passage of Du'a-e Makarim al-Akhlaq by Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salatu wassalam. وَاسْتَصْلِحْ بِقُدْرَتِكَ مَا فَسَدَ مِنِّي. Passage of dua from Imam Zainul Abidin. And by your power rectify what has become corrupted within me. So now, when we look at the idea of corruption, sometimes it's as if I'm talking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That means there are elements within me that are corrupted. And what does it mean? We have in our lives choices. We have opportunities to make decisions in our lives. And all these decisions are from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The life events that we have in our lives, all of them are decided. All of them are written per verses of the Quran. All of them are planned. Now, it is up to us how we utilize those life events, how we utilize those decisions. So the environment by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is already set for what? For guidance. Everything is set for guidance. Now, since the environment is set for guidance, when I utilize these life events, these decisions, for the purpose that Allah Azza wa Jal has placed for that, which is guidance, I have islah in my nafs. I will have a sound iman, sound faith. However, in cases I fail to utilize these opportunities to my advantage, to my benefit, that's where corruption happens. So anytime I'm failing to accept the guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because every moment of my life is what? Is an opportunity for me to receive guidance. So since I'm heedless, since I'm not aware, since I'm missing it, since I have failure in my life, what happens? Corruptions enter to my heart. You see, there's always a level of corruption in hearts. There's a hadith attributed to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that I train my nafs so much so that now I'm the master of my nafs, right? So there's always that struggle that for certain people they come to a point, they reach to a point that their nafs is not going to deceive them anymore because they have practiced this back and forth. But for general public, what we do is, even if we don't commit sins, there will be a level of heedlessness and ghafla in our hearts. So my purpose for mentioning this point is that even if I'm not committing that many sins, still this dua makes sense. Still there are corruptions within heart, within nafs, that it is supposed to be healed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is number one point, and then the major discussion would be something else related to this. The second point is again the repetition that perhaps we've repeated many times from the beginning of these nights. And that is that when it comes to guidance, Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam is teaching us that you're supposed to go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in fact, Quran, that in this dua, you're asking, oh Allah, by your power, وَاسْتَصْلِحْ بِقُدْرَتِكَ. It's as if there's something huge is supposed to happen. This dua is something great that I'm asking by Allah's power to rectify my corruption. It's to that point that I'm sort of seeking refuge to Allah's power. To Allah's power. To do what? To rectify my corruptions that it is in my heart. So these 2 points are amongst the points that I like to have as introduction, and then I'm going to talk more about in regard to Islah, right? Rectifying corruption when it comes to society. And I think I have a disclaimer here right at the beginning, and throughout these three examples that we will go over, please remember these. We're going to recite multiple verses of the Quran tonight. We're going to mention a few stories of Anbiya alayhimus salam. And all of them, they have their own examples, they have their own lessons. But one thing is common amongst all these Anbiya, and I think we should, as parents, as people who want to work with the community, as sibling, because all of us, inshallah, when we ask for Allah for His guidance, and inshallah we receive guidance, we receive knowledge, we receive ilm, and now the second job is what? The second job is to go out and preach it. The second job is to go out and try to guide other people, whether it's my son, my wife, my spouse, my brother, whatever that is. That's going to be my second job because I'm the ambassador of Islam. So the disclaimer is that as we're reciting and as we're going through these different stories, different verses of the Quran, please see the pattern in which how Anbiya is propagating Islam. It's extremely important that I think many of us, we miss to read between the lines and connect the dots when it comes to the stories of prophets and Anbiya. Recite aloud, salawat, please. So there are three indicators of righteous and corrupt society that we have in the Quran. Three indicators that indicate this society is corrupt or righteous. Number one goes back to the story of Israelites, an interesting nation that has a lot to teach Muslims. From the previous nation, when we read the verses of the Quran, there are many emphases by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this nation. That means there's something for Muslims. There's a huge and profound teaching for Muslims. And one of those teaching is the lack of public safety and security. Israelite, a nation who used to be slave of Pharaoh, who went through a lot of oppression and atrocities. Their babies were killed, their women were tortured, their men were enslaved. Now, they became free. By who? By Musa alayhi salam. An amazing story. If we read the whole story, obviously the verses of the Quran regarding the Israelite is scattered around and throughout the Quran, but it's possible there are books also that gather all these verses of the Quran in one sort of chapter and retell the whole story as one story, one full package, one full story. There's many back and forth between Musa alayhi salam and his nation. Soon after Musa alayhi salam, one of the things that they started doing is that they started going after the poor again themselves. They're the one who was free by Musa alayhi salam. Now they're so oppressor, they're so involved with atrocities. Not only they go after the believers, but they also go after the prophets. They kill the prophets. They use fear tactics against the believers, against the prophets. They're the people who were amongst the good ones. So Quran comes and say, فَبِمَا نَقْضِهِمْ مِيثَاقَهُمْ Surah Ma'idah, ayah number 13. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم فبما نقضهم ميثاقهم وكفرهم بآيات الله وقتلهم الأنبياء بغير حق وقولهم قلوبنا غلف. So for their breaking of the covenant, meaning their promise, they kept breaking their promises. This is actually one of the trait of Israelite. So they would seek forgiveness. They would come to the Prophet. They say, "Oh Prophet, we're not going to break our promise. We promise you we're going to be good." And then they go back again to the same thing. So Quran is saying, for their breaking of their promise and covenant, their disbelief in the signs of Allah, their unjust killing of prophets, and they're saying our hearts are sealed. So it is possible through the wrongdoings, through corruptions, through sins, our hearts becomes what? Sealed. It's as if we have a heart, but we cannot recognize. Quran says that too. We have ears, but we cannot listen. We have eyes, but we cannot see. What is it? Quran is extremely clear on this, that it is possible for one or a society as collectively to get involved with oppression, all sorts of forms of oppression. It comes to a point that they cannot really see things, they cannot really understand, they cannot comprehend. Now you may think that, okay, this is for Israelite, right? But actually it happens after the demise of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Amirul Mu'mineen is a very clear case here. For anybody who lives in Medina, it's a very clear case who's going to be the next caliph. Even if you forget the story of Ghadir and so on, all those traditions, if you forget, look at the individuals, the candidates. It's very clear who gets to be the next leader. But since they're so involved with corruption, since they're so involved with different forms of corruption, by the way, they cannot comprehend, they cannot understand. Imam al-Hussein ﷺ would go in front of the enemy, would say things in Arabic. They could understand, but what is it that they cannot comprehend? Because they're filled with corruption. And I want to take a chance here to warn ourselves. And perhaps I'm going to talk about this, inshallah, in the future night as well. When we don't understand as nation, which we didn't during the time of Imam al-Hussein, when we don't understand what the Imam is saying, because that was clear for those people, they couldn't understand what the Imam is saying. Sometimes they would say that, Hussein, we don't understand what you're saying, just come down and stop talking. The language is the same. The language is the same. So what's wrong? What's the problem here? There's a big problem. Imagine you have a teacher. You assign this teacher a professor for first graders. Do you think these students can understand what the teacher is saying, what the teacher is teaching? The teacher, the professor is talking in English to them, but they cannot understand. So what's wrong with that? What's wrong with them? Why they don't understand? Why they don't comprehend the teachings and the lessons of the professor? Because of the different level. So how can these kids understand the value of the professor? Because if they don't understand, they don't comprehend the subject, they cannot say how great that professor is. So in order for this class collectively to understand the professor, the value of the professor, they have to slowly get closer to the level of the professor. The more they get closer to the level of the professor, the more they can understand. Now, Imams come, and this is true for all awliyaullah, for all the friends of Allah, including the prophets. But the best examples are the Imams. The Imams come and say, Amirul Mu'mineen, for instance, in multiple cases, he said, I'm tired of people and people are tired of me. Because I keep saying the same thing, people are hearing the same thing. But there's no movement. My words cannot move you anymore. Sometimes he would tell them that, look, the other side who is in the side of batil and falsehood, look how united they are in their falsehood. Why you're not united in the path of haqq and truth? Amirul Mu'mineen is teaching them high value while they're like that low and down there. So they cannot really understand what Amirul Mu'mineen is saying. So when Amirul Mu'mineen is saying that, ask me whatever question before you lose me, someone raise his hand, I have a question. What is the question? How many hair do I have in my head? What Salman saw in Ali, that he could take Ali seriously. It's not really about how much Salman knew in terms of knowledge. That's not really the whole case. That's just part of it. The main part is that, those moral values, that Salman wanted to be closer to Amirul Mu'mineen because that was his goal. Other people, they didn't want to be closer to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in terms of akhlaq, in terms of traits. You see, what I'm trying to say here is that people living during occultation time, if we fail to have this goal to get closer to the traits of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, we will treat Imam al-As alayhi salatu wasalam in the same way that they treated Hussein. There's no doubt in that. There's no doubt in that, because that's a repetition of incidents that we had in our history, and we have in our history. Take the example, another example. Say that you know someone, I don't want to mention these multi-billionaire guys, right? Without mentioning names, there are few, right? Not many. That clearly they're involved with corruption. Clearly. God knows if someone would release all the information that are out there, they cannot walk outside the street. People will go after them. Many corruptions they're involved with. Many people, they lost their houses, they lost their souls, right? Their lives. Many lives were shattered so these guys can become rich. They don't believe. And sometimes they give to other organization, but that's not solely for giving, right? The purpose for that is to just gain a social whatever status, IRS, all sorts of reasons. So you have someone that all he or she wants is what? To gain wealth. And then on the other hand, I tell you and I give you this task. I said, brother, you see this guy, can you go and talk to him so he can pay his zakat, his share? Nobody can know. Just give, say, 20% of his wealth. 10% of his wealth, without, nobody can know, right? Nobody knows, just for a greater cause. As soon as you go to them, they're going to tell you, are you crazy? I earned this. I gained this. Why should I give it to others? The concept of charity is meaningless. The clear example that it actually happened is Qarun. Qarun was Israelites from the nation of Musa alayhi salam. He was someone that Quran talks about him, that he became so rich that he would have a caravan, and then when he would walk on the street, people will look at him and say that I wish I was Qarun. I wish I had those wealth. You just show off. Tabarruj al-jahiliyyati al-ula, right? Tabarruj. He would do tabarruj, meaning he would show off so much so that people will look at his car, supercar, at the time perhaps horse, whatever. They would say, I wish I had his wealth. That emotion that poor people had in their hearts. How Qarun became rich? Mostly because Allah Azza wa Jal has blessed the nation of Musa alayhi salam with many rain, with many barakat, with many favors. As a result, Qarun became rich and he was a believer. At least on paper, he became rich. Allah told Musa, "O Musa, go to Qarun and ask him for his zakat." O Musa, now it's time for Qarun to pay his share. Musa went to him, he said, "Pay your zakat." He said, "Why should I give it to you? I did it with my own knowledge. I knew how business works. I became rich. Why should I give?" What is the purpose of this story? Musa alayhi salam is ready to give all his life. He's the prophet. He's the role model. But his follower is what? He doesn't want to pay his share even. Obligatory share. Musa alayhi salam was talking to Qarun in the same language that Qarun was speaking, but Qarun couldn't understand what Musa alayhi salam was saying. In Qarun's mind, Musa is, na'udhu billah, God forbid, crazy. Do you think I'm crazy? Qarun was tested by his wealth. Say that Imam comes, we're going to be tested. We're going to be tested. So what is the solution? The solution is thinking about the values of the Imam alayhi salam. Right? Thinking about the values. What is it that Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam are setting those values as their priorities? And for the most part, some of those values are not going to make sense to us. Some of them. Some of them are not going to make sense to us. Like, God knows, if we had companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam here, perhaps people wouldn't care about them. Really. Perhaps if we had true companions of Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wasalam, perhaps some of those companions, we wouldn't take them seriously. It's just about the way they lived, their priorities. Now, I'm not saying that we should sort of leave the dunya. No discussion on that. Dunya is important. We have to take care of it, right? But the problem is that when we enter corruption in our hearts, and that corruption has many, many, many different forms that inshallah in the following nights we'll talk about that. But for tonight, I think this should be enough for us, and as a reminder for all of us, inshallah, on these blessed nights of Qadr, Ramadan, I should say, reflecting on the values of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. And truly, 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 because this is clear verses of the Quran, although we think sometimes contrary to that when we talk about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which he's the teacher of all Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, when we talk about him in Quran, he's a role model for us. What does that mean? That means every one of us and every children that we have, our role model and the benchmark is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? So the goal is to be like Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not even his companions. Be like Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Any goal lower than that, that's basically the whole lecture in a nutshell. Any goal lower than that is going to lead us astray. That's the goal. Because for those who wish to meet Allah with a content heart, right? With a content heart, with a joyful and happy heart in the day of resurrection, they have to take Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as their role model. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us, inshallah, with guidance. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to bless us with forgiveness in the remaining days and nights of Ramadan. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless our brothers and sisters in Palestine, in Yemen, in Gaza, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Iran, in Kashmir, in Parajan or Pakistan, and all in Afghanistan. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless them with security, with safety, with protection, with prosperity, and with liberation for our brothers and sisters in Palestine. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the appearance of Imam al-As alayhi salatu wassalam and make us inshallah a deserving community for the dhuhur and reappearance of our beloved Imam al-Mahdi ajjalallah ta'ala farjuhu sharif. Wassalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alayka ya Rasul Allah. Assalamu alayka ya Nabi Allah. Assalamu alayka ya khair khalqillah. Assalamu alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Assalamu alayka ya Ibna Rasul Allah. Assalamu alayka ya Hussein Shaheed Karbala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alayka ya Gharib al-Gharba. Assalamu alayka ya Mu'in al-Zufai wal-Fuqara. Assalamu alayka ya Anis al-Nafus. Assalamu alayka ya Ayy al-Madfoon bi-Arzatus. Assalamu alayka ya Ali ibn Musa al-Reza. Assalamu alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alayka ya Sahib as-Sif az-Zaman. Assalamu alayka ya Khalifat ar-Rahman. Assalamu alayka ya Imam al-Ins wal Jan. Assalamu alayka ya Sharik al-Quran. Assalamu alayka ya Imam zamanina haza ajallallahu ta'ala farajak wa sahhalallahu makharajak wa zuhurak wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Allahumma kulli waliyaka hujjat ibn al-Hasan salawatuka alayhi wa ala abaihi fi hadhihi as-sa'a wa fi kulli sa'a waliyan wa hafizan wa qa'idan wa nasira wa dalilan wa aynan hatta tuskinahu arzaka tawa وَتُمَتِّعُوا فِيهَا طَوِيلًا بِرَحْمَتِكَ يَا أَرْحَمَ الرَّاحِمِينَ اللهم صل